Well, March is National Women's History Month. Perfect timing for our upcoming Brick Flicks event next Wednesday called Women Behind the Lens. This film screening is being presented by Brick in partnership with Chicken and Egg Pictures, which provides funds and production support to women involved in nonfiction filmmaking. We have two representatives here today to tell us more about their roles with the event. But before we meet them, let's take a look at what Chicken and Egg has been up to for the past 10 years.
My goal is to fill this wall up. And then once I fill this wall up, I don't know what I'm gonna do. Hopefully, like, my whole office will just be covered in acquittals. I decided since the wins go on the wall, the losses have to go somewhere. And I'm gonna tattoo, I don't have any tattoos, I'm gonna get the last name of every case I've lost tattooed on my back. Right now it's only 5, and hopefully I won't fill my back up. That's the goal.
People like Stacy and I are just average people. We're just average people that have a home and a couple dogs and pay our taxes. And we just wanted everything to be equal.
Question number 6 in Maryland, that is a yes.
Oh my gosh, yes.
I think that if we stick to those categories of race and class and gender, we are stuck.
یعنی خدا شما رو کرده یه وسیله که به نجوم بیشتر اهمیت بدن.
ولی مثلا من چیزایی که انتخاب میکنم همیشه با عرف جامعه هیچ چیزی نداره. تو ساده چه؟
من میکشم.
میکشی؟
خدا وکیل.
خدا میدونه.
خدا وکیلی میکشم. چه دختر خودم چه دختر خواهر باشه. میکشم.
چه تقابل کن اشکال نداره. من که رسد میرم مطمئنم 10 نفر دیگه پشت من میام رسد. من هیچ وقت تنها نیستم.
Years, over 225 films.
And counting.
Imagine that. With us now to preview our March 9th Brick Flicks event are Jenny Wolfson, the Executive Director for Chicken and Egg Pictures. Welcome, Jenny. Thank you so much for being on BK Live. And via phone in Santa Fe, New Mexico, Jennifer Bray, the producer of one of the films, will be screening next Wednesday. It's called Canary in a Coal Mine. Thank you both for being here. Jenny, let's start off with you. How did Chicken and Egg become involved with the Brick Flicks series?
Which came first, the chicken or the egg?
Well, thank you for having me. We became involved with you through Rachel Chanoff, who's one of our experts or advisors, and we just, there's a lot of alignment between the two organizations and what we do, and so we're excited to be part of next week's event.
So 10 years later, over 225 films, What was the inspiration of getting funding for these women, specifically for non-fiction films?
Well, Chicken and Egg Pictures was founded just over 10 years ago by 3 intrepid women, Julie Parker Bonello, Wendy Ettinger, and Judith Helfand. And they saw a gap in the documentary industry where women were not making as many films as men and not getting the kind of support and access that they needed to tell, important stories. And so they created Chicken and Egg Pictures as a way of addressing that gap.
Jennifer, you're on the phone with us from Santa Fe. Thank you for being here. What can you tell us about the message behind your film, Canary in a Coal Mine?
Sure. So I started making this film about 3 years ago. About 5 years ago, I became mysteriously sick after a high fever, and I went to doctor after doctor and was told that maybe I was just stressed or depressed, that it was all in my head. And eventually I became bedridden and had no idea what was happening to me, had no treatment and no support. And so I went online to try to find a diagnosis, and I found thousands of people all over the world just like me, living in their homes and bedrooms and connecting with each other online. And so I sort of felt like the only way to really reveal the story of this hidden world of people living with a disease called myalgic encephalomyelitis, better known in the U.S. as chronic fatigue syndrome, was to bring cameras into the homes and bedrooms and to sort of reveal this hidden world. And so there's a big kind of gender component to this, since the disease disproportionately affects women. 80% of patients are women, as are many, many patients living with autoimmune conditions. So that was sort of how I started making this film, and then I connected with Chicken and Egg, who have been amazing supporters, not only financially, but in the sense of sort of just creating a community. I mean, making a film is such a hard thing to do, and it takes everything from you, sort of both strategically, producing the film as well as creatively directing it. And so it's been really amazing connecting with other women storytellers and sort of seeing the way that our journeys connect and how we can support each other.
So Jennifer is one of the chosen few. A little birdie told us that it's harder to get into Harvard. It's easier to get into Harvard, than it is to be one of the Chicken and Egg squad. So what is the application process like? How many things do you guys filter through?
So we run several different programs, but to give an example, we have an accelerator lab for first and second time filmmakers who can apply from all over the world. And so this past year we had over 410 applications, and we chose 10 films to support. So from the 410, but we created a second program, a Diversity Fellows program out of that, because we saw a lot of women of color that were making it to the semi-final round, but couldn't quite get through. So we wanted to provide them with additional support so that they could strengthen their ability to pitch their stories and their films the next time around to us or to other filmmakers. So we're really looking to sort of identify new voices, underrepresented voices, and to give women opportunities that they might not be getting elsewhere.
So we're also here to talk about the event here, March 9th. Brick Flicks. What sort of underrepresented voices can people expect to view at that event?
Right. So that's going to be a really fantastic, lineup. We're going to be talking with 3 different filmmakers who we support. One is Jen Bray, who will be there in person talking about her film Canary in a Coal Mine. The other film is by Kat Gund, which is about Elizabeth Streb and her Extreme Action Company, and Elizabeth Streb will be in attendance also. Cool. And the third film, Speed Sisters, directed by Amber Fairs, is about the first all-female car racing team in the Middle East, and Jessica Devaney, the producer, will be with us there. And so we'll show clips of the films and talk about the importance of women behind the lens.
Oh, that's an awesome window to the world. I'm just curious of how the sort of Kickstarter whole funding model has trickled down or risen up, and how it might affect women filmmakers specifically, and what you guys do with Chicken and Egg with all these people self-funding and sending out those links.
So Kickstarter provides, wonderful opportunities for filmmakers, to raise funds for their film in addition to other crowdsourcing. There's never enough money out there for a documentary filmmaker. I don't know if you saw the Oscars where, there was that joke made about how the documentary filmmakers were going back home in their, Honda Civics. What is, I think what's great about Chicken and Egg, to toot our own horn, is that we come in, pretty early on in the sort of funding cycle, where women are just conceptualizing their idea and they haven't perhaps got so far along in the story. And so things like Kickstarter are great once you're further along and have usually have something more to show to be able to raise money and support.
Very cool.
Jennifer, you still on the phone?
Yes, I'm right here.
Wondering what your take on women filmmakers are and what you hope to see happens in the next decade to bring more voices like yours to the forefront.
Well, I think that it is definitely important to have more women voices, but in some ways I would broaden it. I think that one thing that is really, that I've learned since becoming sick and making a film while, disabled, while not able-bodied, is that we all see the world from where we sit, and so we all tell stories from where we sit. And it's been this interesting experience because, I was born a certain way, I'm female, I'm biracial, but I was always able-bodied. And so in some ways I've had this experience through making this film of becoming disabled and really seeing the world from a completely different vantage point. And so our world is diverse, diverse in age and class and gender identity and race and ethnic community, in ability, and I think the only way that we get a media that reflects our experience is if we have a range of storytellers that are equally diverse. So I'm really excited in general about how that conversation has been cropping up in all kinds of places, how television is really leading the way there, I think, as compared to sort of, say, Hollywood, and also how documentary film is leading the way. There's still, there's still a disparity in terms of women directors in documentary, but it is much more equitable and diverse than what you see in sort of these sort of big commercial films. So I think that there's a new awareness about the problem, and I think people are having conversations, and it just makes good sense, both in terms of the impact that social documentaries want to have, as well as the commercial impact that sort of narrative films want to have. So I think it's a really exciting time, and I'm looking forward to seeing what happens.
So, Jenny, are women killing it in that space? We know that Hollywood always has a lot of catching up to do. There's like no women directors in those big categories, but we saw a woman director take home the Oscar for her non-fiction short doc. But how are women doing in that space, getting equity?
So that's a great question. I mean, women are definitely doing much better in the documentary field than the narrative field. It's about 28% of women filmmakers are documentary filmmakers versus about 4%, I think, in narrative. But, there's a lot of work to be done, clearly, to get to, 50%. And I think sort of really keeping, the focus on, increasing opportunities, with funding, resources, creative opportunities, and things like that. There's, as Jen says, a lot of momentum right now around this issue, but as we all know, the conversation sort of come and go. So I think some real concrete solutions are needed to turn this around.
Well, we can celebrate that upward mobility March 9th here at Brick House at the Brick Flicks Festival, and all the time at Chicken and Egg Productions. How do people find out more about your company?
So we're a nonprofit, chickeneggpics.org. Come check us out, sign up for a newsletter. One of the things I didn't mention is that the focus of Chicken and Egg Pictures is, for the most part, films that have, that address social issues. So we're really looking for, women filmmakers from all over the world looking to change the world through their stories and through their engagement campaigns.
Phenomenal. Well, we'll see you March 9th.
Thank you.
Thanks for
Looking
being
forward to it.
Thank you. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Thank you for taking the time. We'll see you March 9th.